Continues our team coverage this afternoon with attorneys Richard Hornsby and Jeff Dean. Bob, Casey Anthony had some pretty strong reaction to her father's testimony.
Yeah, no doubt about that one, Jason. It was interesting to watch George come off the stand, really just a beaten man. But Casey almost seemed like she was looking at an adversary rather than her father. And for more reaction on Casey's reaction, let's turn to Jeff Dean and Richard Hornsby. And Jeff, let me ask you first. What, in terms of her reaction, is that harming her?
Well, she's in a no-win situation with her reaction. First of all, if she's sympathetic with her dad, then people may not believe the insinuation that she was molested by him. If she's angry with her father, then she's perceived as some kind of cold-hearted person who has no feelings for what her father's going through. She genuinely believes that she's been molested. If she has been molested, then you know, how is she supposed to act? So she's sort of in a no-win situation when it comes to, you know, just the camera being on her. The fact is, though, is that the defendant has her lawyer up there. He has again missed, I think, an important point. They finally get to the part about the molestation.
Right.
He says, you'll never, Jose Baez looks at him and says, you'll never admit to molesting your daughter. And instead of George Anthony going, no, that isn't the case, he goes, well, you're going to have to be more specific. When are you talking about? What did you just say? And nothing happened. So what I know from this trial is two things. Dr. Voss is not a chemist, and George Anthony's put tape on a gas can. That's what I know from this defense.
And Richard, we heard so much about the gas can today. Is the jury picking up on what the importance of this is? We've heard so much back and forth.
I think the jury has to be picking up on the importance of it, and I think that it's the context in which you view George's testimony. We, from the outside, view George's testimony because we've seen it for the last 3 years. We know all the evidence, and we know all the evidence that's not admissible in court, and that's how we portray it. But they're looking at us, George has done a lot of peculiar things. First, he denies the gas, and Jose Baez is making the point. You started covering your tracks once it started turning back towards you, and I think he's making that point to the jury, not to us public, because we all know the evidence, but to the jury. That jury is going to have a hard time. They're going to go back into that room, they're going to deliberate, and they're going to have a hard time reconciling George's very strange behavior, the way you can always seem to connect everything back to him of all people. And I think that plays into the defense's hands, even though his testimony seemed to be so helpful to the state today.
And Jeff, from the prosecution's point of view, we heard Jeff Ashton say he was glad to have Jose Baez open the door to George's suicide attempt. Did the state, in essence, succeed in turning George Anthony into their witness?
They haven't yet, but they're getting ready to, and he's already told you that he's going to put that note in. Bob, that moment when George Anthony doesn't directly deny that he molested his daughter, that's probably the 4th or 5th time, but this is the first time in this trial he was confronted with that, and he just didn't go, no, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, you're going to have to be more specific. It's exactly what Richard's talking about. This elusive sort of slithery sort of attitude now is all lost in the fact that he broke down on the stand, he tried to commit suicide. All of those moments are always missed by this defense, and I don't understand how it is that they keep fumbling over. And if I'm the prosecutor, I'm just thanking my lucky stars that I don't have to sit up there and go through a redirect examination of all the times George Anthony hasn't molested his daughter.
Yeah, and Richard, in terms of that suicide note, we get this big revelation that George bought a gun in August 2008. Doesn't this help the prosecution say George didn't know what happened to Kaylee?
Bob, I can't agree with that necessarily, because as a defense attorney, I try to think of things the way a jury is thinking about things to figure out how they may perceive it. And all I know is it's weird that he bought a gun knowing that his daughter would get kicked out and have to go back to jail. It's weird that he went and tried to commit suicide, but yet he was using beer and blood pressure medicine. Maybe in this note, maybe he was in fact trying to cast blame away from himself and knew that he would be rescued, quote unquote. And so as good as George's testimony sounds today, the jury doesn't know what we know about 3 years, and I think they're sitting back there going, I can't believe beyond a reasonable doubt that George doesn't know how his granddaughter died.
So this may not have blown up in the defense's face as much as some people have said?
I just, as a juror, no. I think a juror is going to be, they're going to look at this like Perry Mason, they're going to be going, there's a lot more there that we need to think about.
I'm with him. Jeff? I think that's true. I think we might be in the minority about that, but I agree with Richard. I don't think George Anthony, I mean, he's got a lot of questions.
All right, Richard, Jeff, thanks very much. It promises to be another emotional afternoon of testimony after a pretty extraordinary morning. Let's get back to you now.